It's a piece of great beauty and great grief in equal measure. It's just quintessential Rachmaninoff. Quite simple in its approach to the melody, but really very, very beautiful in a minimalist sense. The accompanying harmonies are just rapturous. So there is the element of beauty, which is just undeniable. But then, equally, there is great grief and sorrow. It breathes deeply, and it descends. But true to form, to make us aware of the descent, Rachmaninoff ascends first. And he never ascends quickly, he does, because I've appreciated and absolutely loved Rachmaninoff because he is so human. Not that he's any more human than any other composer, but he strikes a chord of familiarity with me personally. He rises, but never in equal steps to where it might even be predictable to even the novice listener. He rises in half steps, in incremental values, and he's always reminding me that the point of destination, it may seem close to us or attainable to us, but there's a lot that's going to distract us or perhaps slam doors in our face to test our faith and our willingness, our willpower. And so he rises slowly. And even as he rises, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So you get the feel as if you're going somewhere, but then your life pushes back, but you push forward, and eventually you get there. And then when you get there, it's like a flowering. You see those slow motion photography or pictures, images of flowers slowly opening. That's what it is when you arrive at Rachmaninoff's arrival point. The flower opens and the fragrance is beautiful, and then it's just, you can smell the arrival. And then from it, nobody lives there. That's paradise. He descends again. And so in Rachmaninoff, to me, everything is a dream. Life is a dream, a wonderful dream that calls us to things. But it's never the destination that is the end point. It's just the beginning and the release into another calling. Grief is an isolating thing. And the melody, beautiful as it is, it's just the melody. It's written in C-sharp minor, which is an odd key, and not often used key. So right away it's special. The key has a resonance to it, but an element in and of itself of strangeness, like a sort of otherworldliness. But that melody persists throughout. And the singer, it was originally written for a Russian singer, soprano. It has no words. It's sung on the vowel oo, on the sound oo throughout, which I think is very appropriate because it's a sound that when words fail you, all you're left with is a sound, and it's usually a vowel sound. So I remember singing it myself to oo, and it does change you. Your whole body becomes a resonating chamber with that vowel, and it gets expelled through the mouth, and you feel the grief being expelled through this vowel, and breaths become different. So it changes one's breathing pattern to even sing. And so I had to inculcate that into the playing. But that present, ever-present melody, grief and grieving though it is, becomes a bit more persistent, darker, if you will. And in the middle, just when the disquiet becomes unsettling, Rachmaninoff introduces a parallel melody counter to it. And it's introduced as a whisper, a distant whisper, as if it almost didn't, that one could overlook completely. It didn't happen, I didn't hear it. But as the melody continues, this shadowing continues too. And I've always seen that as grief and its parallel, because we like to think in terms of opposites, but I see things more in terms of polarities. And grief and hope are two sides of the same coin. But in grief, with great suffering, isolating grief, one thinks in terms of, one is led to think unavoidably, I am alone in this. I am on my own. There's no help. It's just me against this. But that's not the case. That's just the other side of hope. So hope in this piece asserts itself, never forcefully, never, as if it's drawing attention to itself by its silence, by its echo. But by the echo, when you hear it the second time, you have to realize, I hear something now. And then that's all it does. It echoes twice. The second time it extends to the cadence point in the music. And then as if the music says, let's see what grief does now. And we're human, so what does grief do in the experience? It throws itself into the experience, and then it becomes almost desperation. And the music portrays that. The melodies are hauntingly beautiful. Lots of seventh chords and clashes of harmonies, but Wild voices them very beautifully. It's very wonderful pianistic writing. And that's how the piece ends, in acceptance of grief and the reality of death and the isolation. Or at least that's how one thinks it ends. There's a cadenza that Wild writes to kind of cement the closing. And then finally, just at the very end, as if grief reasserts itself to say, I have control of you, and the melody comes back, then the counter melody, hope, comes in. Now the main melody descends essentially, but the secondary melody, hope, comes in at the very end saying, no, you're absolutely wrong. I'm here. This is not the end. The end is hope, because now the melody comes back with greater force, or at least that's how I draw it out of the music. Mr. Wild doesn't indicate that it should be so, but again, that's my take on it. And now, contrary to the primary melody, hope ascends, and eventually takes over grief, and grief, its melody, descends, and hope continues. And that's still not the end, because hope is still a choice. It's not a separate entity from us. And it's not until the very, very coda, the last two or three measures of the piece, that the two collide. Very faintly, but they do collide. And you have to listen hard for the collision, it's a direct parallelism. They're both singing exactly the same thing. And that was just so rewarding for me to realize that this music, all music, could parallel life as we have it, but if one looks deeper, how life really is. So it becomes a therapeutic experience, an unavoidably therapeutic experience, if one wants it to be. And I think that's one of the great powers of music. By itself, music can be played for any instrument, for any combination, any time, can be played and made to be beautiful. But if you delve deep, and if one is willing to face one's own reality and realize that it's a shared reality. Grief is not something solitary to me. We all share it in different ways, but the outcome is still the same. It wants to isolate us, and hope, if we listen to it, if we have friends that remind us, or music that reminds us, tells us that there's always hope where there's grief. And the love of my piece, now it's just become like a friend. If I could collect that music and frame it or make it under a rug or a blanket or something, I would. But I think more importantly and more to the point, it's actually a part of my DNA now.